Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house. Welcome to Shaq's house.
What's going on, Shaq Housers? How you doing? It's your boy, the one and only Shaq House here. Like my X-Men shirt? Yeah, I know you feeling it. Yeah, show me your X-Men shirts when you get a chance, folks. Check this out. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the X-Men's most popular characters, Remy LeBeau, the Cajun known as Gambit. For me personally, I first got exposed to the character through the 90s X-Men cartoon when I was a 4th grader. When I saw this dude in a trench coat who could just energize playing cards and spoke in a Cajun accent, I thought he was one of the coolest characters I saw and wanted to learn more about him. Thankfully, in the years to come, later writers expounded on his history and made it very rich and a very well-connected criminal history as well, too. We're going to be talking about that today, along with his powers, how they might work, his wife, Rogue, Storm, Mr. Sinister. We're going to be talking about all that. So check it out. Remy, Etienne. I can't speak no French. Let me just say all about Gambit. Check it out. Okay, let's start off with Gambit's bio. Gambit was born an infant with burning red eyes who was abandoned by his parents at a New Orleans hospital. The Thieves Guild patriarch, Jean-Luc Lebeau, believed the child to be Le Diable Blanc, the White Devil, and kidnapped the child from the hospital, placing him in the care of a gang of street thieves led by a guild member named Fagin, who raised the child and taught him the ways of thievery. When he was around 8 years old, Remy sought to save a young girl from being accosted by a group of thugs. However, the girl turned out to be Belladonna Boudreaux, the daughter of the Assassin's Guild's patriarch and trained since birth in the killing arts. But nonetheless, Remy and Belladonna became best friends and eventually fell in love. When he was around 10 years old, Remy tried to pickpocket Jean-Luc Lebeau himself, who took the boy off the streets and adopted him into his own family. Remy's mutant powers manifested at puberty, though he kept it a secret. Subsequently, as part of a peace pact between the Thieves Guild and the Assassin's Guild, a marriage between Remy and Belladonna was arranged. However, Belladonna's brother, Julien, objected to the marriage and challenged Remy to a duel. Remy killed him in self-defense, but was excommunicated from the guild and banished from New Orleans in order to maintain the truce. Remy then wandered the world and applied his skills as a master thief, and eventually gained full control over his mutant power. But when his powers flared out of control, Remy approached Mr. Sinister for help. Sinister removed some of Gambit's brain tissue in order to reduce his power levels, thus affording him control. Now indebted to Sinister, Gambit undertook several missions on his behalf, but wanted to leave his service. Sinister charged Gambit with one last mission, gathering mutant assassins who later became the Marauders, for which Remy received excised brain tissue as a symbolic payment. When Mr. Sinister had the Marauders massacre the underground Morlock community, a horrified Remy tried to stop them, but was almost killed by the Marauders' Sabretooth. Despite this, Remy saved one young Morlock girl named Sarah, who grew up to become the X-Man known as Marrow. Months later, he encountered the X-Men leader known as Storm, who'd been reduced mentally and physically to adolescence. They became thieving partners, and after an encounter with the villainous Nanny that restored Storm's memories, Remy helped her locate the missing X-Men. Storm then sponsored Remy's membership into the group, and he quickly became a valued team member. He also soon became interested in his teammate, Rogue, who he dated and eventually married years later. Later, during a trip back in time, Remy's powers were restored to their maximum potential by Sinister, and he used them to return to the present. The mysterious villain known as the New Sun organized an assassin game for a cadre of superpowered mercenaries with Remy as their target. The attempt failed, and Remy learned that the New Sun was actually his variant from Earth 9921. In that reality, the New Sun's kinetic charging powers flared out of control, burning the world and killing everyone but himself. As a result, the New Sun hunted down and killed his variants in other realities so they wouldn't repeat his mistakes. During their final battle, Remy burned through his enhanced power levels to defeat the new sun, thus ending that threat and returning his power levels to normal. After the return of Apocalypse, Remy sought to infiltrate his ranks by offering himself willingly to become a Horseman. However, he was unaware that Apocalypse's transformation procedure would also allow him to be brainwashed, and he emerged as Apocalypse's newest Horseman, Death. Alongside fellow new Horsemen, War, Famine, who was Sunfire, and Pestilence, who was Polaris, Gambit attacked the X-Men, but when Sunfire broke free of Apocalypse's control, he fled, taking Gambit with him. He then freed Remy from his Horseman conditioning by using his flame powers, and shortly after, Gambit was recruited by Sinister into a new incarnation of the Marauders, and also reversed Apocalypse's alterations, restoring his original appearance and powers. After that, he's been through various X-teams, before and after the Krakoan era, including X-Factor and Excalibur. Currently, for the From the Ashes era, he's back with the X-Men. Gambit. Gambit's mutant power is interkinesis. He converts the potential energy of an inorganic object into kinetic energy. Now, potential energy is stored energy and the energy of position, gravitational energy, and kinetic energy is energy of motion. But specifically, what Gambit generates is biokinetic energy, that is, kinetic energy generated by living beings. His power requires physical contact with an object in order to trigger the effect, and cannot affect organic molecules. His interkinetic force stirs molecules into volatile and unstable activity, making anything charged by his power highly explosive on impact, destroying the charged object and creating a burst of concussive force that varies depending on the mass of the object. Although it has been shown that Gambit can charge an object and it can dissolve into energy without it making an impact. The chain reaction generated by his interkinetics rushes through the entire uniform surface of what he touches, not just the area that he comes into direct contact with. And the amount of time it takes for him to complete a charge depends on the mass and volume of the object. For example, a knife is fully charged in under a second, but a 2-foot thick steel vault door may take 10 seconds or longer. The interkinetic energy active in his body only causes unstable kinetic activity. It is not explosive itself. Typically, he uses playing cards as a focus for his power, and once he has energized an object, Gambit can mentally cause it to explode with concussive force after a set time limit, though he usually allows such objects to detonate upon impact. His internal energy does have a hyperkinetic boosting effect on his system though, causing his agility and other physical attributes to be always maintained at peak human levels. It also has a disruptive effect on psionics, as he can create a static interference that shields his mind from telepathic detection and intrusion by even the most powerful of telepaths. And Gambit has found that it is possible to amplify this distortion even further by holding a charged card near his head. And Gambit has also undergone surgery to remove a portion of his brain, thus limiting the full potential of his abilities. In recent years, he temporarily regained these enhanced power levels. This gave him the power to affect organic molecules as well, and his range was expanded by line of sight, and an invisible field of interkinetic energy now always extended out into his environment. Before he could fully control his powers, this meant that Gambit might accidentally explode anything in his immediate area and line of sight. He also became capable of controlling the kinetic charge of his power for various effects. He could now tag objects with a dormant charge that he could mentally detect and track from a distance, create different intensities of heat by stirring up molecular activity, burning his opponents, or simply causing them extreme discomfort as their molecules shuffled around. Remy could also mentally control the power of the explosion he created when charging an object, creating ones much weaker or stronger than he previously could, and even create a charge to completely incinerate matter without causing an explosion at all. Gambit's physical abilities were also increased by the use of his powers. His strength, agility, reaction time, and especially his endurance were boosted to superhuman levels so long as he continued to employ his powers. Though this made him virtually tireless during a sustained conflict, Remy would begin feeling the exhaustion of all of his activity once the situation cooled down and his inner kinetic levels in his body dropped back down to their standard levels from disuse. When Gambit's powers were enhanced to their maximum potential, he could charge any object within his vicinity, including organic objects, without the need to physically touch them. Gambit could also manipulate the potency of an object's energy release, utilize stored kinetic energy to travel through time, and heal himself by tapping into his body's own kinetic energy. But ultimately, a conflict with his alternate self, the new sun, burnt out these excess power levels. Gambit also has a hypnotic charm that has been employed very sparingly over the years. It takes the form of a special quality to his voice, lulling people into complacency and making them far more susceptible to believing anything he has to tell them, and more inclined to think doing what he asks is a good idea. People are far more capable of resisting it if they're aware of his power and recognize what he's doing, however. Also, as the Horseman known as Death, Gambit was mutagenically altered by Apocalypse. In that form, he had jet black skin, long chalky white hair, and his eyes were even more red than before. But Mr. Sinister apparently reversed the transformation before the Messiah Complex event, and Remy became capable of shifting between Gambit and Death forms at will, kind of like Angel and Archangel do. As Death, Gambit could manipulate the potential energy of objects within his vicinity and convert the materials into toxic substances. For example, he could transmute regular oxygen into a toxic vapor. This enables him to summon clouds of lethal gas literally out of thin air, creating an anaerobic environment that leaves his foes breathless and can kill them if they inhale and metabolize too much of it. Gambit can even transform the air inside of someone's lungs directly into this toxic vapor, killing them from the inside out. Once converted, he could effectively project the gas at a range of up to 15 feet. Although he could project it beyond 15 feet, the gas gradually dissipated and lost its effectiveness. As Death, he could still charge objects, but he filled them with a black carbonizing energy. And he was able to mentally direct his black charged objects, guiding them towards specific targets. And once they strike an object, the charged objects quickly spread black energy over the object, consuming them completely and reducing them to ash. As Death, he also possesses some level of superhuman strength and resistance to impact, and has increased psychic senses or protection which allows him to overcome certain kinds of mental influence. Okay, here are some fun facts about Gambit. He's an excellent hand-to-hand combatant, utilizing street fighting techniques and acrobatics, and he is highly skilled in the martial arts of Bojutsu, that is, staff technique, and Savate, French kickboxing. He is also a master thief, skilled in breaking and entering, pickpocketing, lockpicking, disabling security systems, and sleight of hand. He is also bilingual in both English and Cajun French, and is proficient in throwing small objects with great accuracy, including knives, playing cards, and throwing spikes. He's had many looks throughout his career, but this is the costume and trench coat that he has worn throughout his career, and neither one of them are for show. The costume looks form-fitting, with the pants and sleeves colored black with stripes of magenta, and the torso being entirely magenta colored. And he also wears knee-high metallic boots, fingerless gloves, and a headdress. But the costume is actually a high-impact, lightweight, modularly aligned body armor composed of high-carbon titanium steel alloy meshing. It also contains Freon to mask his body's thermal signature, and the trench coat is made of a synthetic stretch fabric lined with Kevlar to make it bulletproof. Gambit often carries a few decks of playing cards upon his person, usually in a leather satchel or a utility belt. He also regularly wields a steel alloy battle staff, extending up to 10 feet in length, that can be broken down into two short clubs, which are strapped on each thigh. On occasion, Gambit has charged his staff and allowed it to discharge explosively against someone, yet the staff is not destroyed in the process as most of his charged objects are, and the composition of his staff that allows this process is unrevealed. He also sometimes carries theft devices such as ferrous dust, which masks his presence on video cameras, and talcum powder used to view infrared beams, and a mini laser torch used to cut glass, and lockpicks. Okay, Here are some thoughts on the character. As a mutant thief, he has many contacts and has met many mutant criminals like himself, including Sabretooth, Scalp Hunter, Frenzy, to name a few. But why is the character of Gambit so popular? I mean, yeah, the 90s was the era for a bad boy, anti-hero comic aesthetic, and big guns as well too. Now Wolverine, he fit that archetype minus the guns long before, but Gambit, he was different. He was a chain smoker back when comics allowed people to smoke cigarettes, impossibly navigated around in a trench coat. He spoke English and Louisiana French with a Cajun accent, was a ladies' man, mysterious, unpredictable, suave, and an all-around tough guy with a really cool power. He's had several solo comic series over the years because of his popularity, but has never descended into self-parody like Deadpool. Although, having Channing Tatum portray him in a cosplay manner in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, that may say otherwise. As far as his on-screen portrayals go, I like Taylor Kitsch's version the best, the one from the first X-Men Origins film, and that was one of the few good things to come out of that film. Honestly, if Mickey Rourke was still pretty and still sounded pretty like he did in the 80s, he would have made a perfect Gambit. Also, in regards to Gambit's first appearance, it's still regarded as Uncanny X-Men number 266, not the Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14. And the reason the latter is sometimes considered his first appearance was because due to a shipping error at Marvel, that was released first. Although chronologically, 266, that's actually his first appearance. Also, when he was first portrayed, his power was shown as him being able to use his eyes in order to charge objects, specifically knives. But by his second appearance in the Uncanny X-Men number 267, that was quickly dropped in favor of his trademark playing cards. And during the Revolution era back in 2000, when Chris Claremont returned to the X-Men titles, the blue and gold strike teams were reintroduced, and Gambit was placed as leader of the X-Men team consisting of himself, Cable, Jean Grey, Beast, and Storm. And at the time, he was also doing double duty as the patriarch of the Thieves Guild. Some of his best moments in comics are right here. Saving Iceman from hostile humans at a bar in Seattle. Just look at this entrance. Charging a whole deck of playing cards at a scroll that was shifted into Gladiator. Thank you, Jim Lee. And this classic Danger Room battle sequence where he just owned Wolverine. Bang, you dead. Also, the X-Traitor storyline that occurred once Gambit met the future X-Men known as Bishop was because the latter believed that Gambit was going to betray and murder the X-Men based on incomplete information from his own future. But as it turned out, the X-Traitor was really Charles Xavier as Onslaught. But Bishop, much to his credit, was man enough to own up to Gambit about his mistake. X-Men forgive, but Gambit keeping his part in the mutant massacre hidden from his teammates for that long, it took a while for them to forgive, but they eventually came around. But Gambit's popularity, it endures to this day, and hopefully, on screen, I hope we get a real, official appearance from the character that does him justice. Alright, Shackhousers, that's what I got for you today about the Ragin' Cajun known as Gambit. Tune into my next video. We're going to be talking about another person in a suit. Not an X character, not an Alpha Flight character, but a girl in a suit. Comment who you think it is, and I'll see you on the next video. You have a good one. Later.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack house. Yes!